Hello. Welcome to the Relton Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 best horror movies of all time list. My name is Clay, and with me, as always, is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
Just mediocre. How are you?
Good. I will be speaking in only whispers today in honor of Oliver Reed's performance in the movie we're covering today, which is David Cronenberg's The Brood.
Is that why you're wearing that mock neck turtleneck and
nothing else?
And a sateen robe and some house slippers?
He definitely was like, I'm bringing my own wardrobe to this one, baby.
Yeah, like no costume, no hair, no makeup. I will walk onto set as I am, or I will not walk onto set at all.
I would like the greatest coat you can find.
Yeah, that was a great
And
coat.
A karate gi.
No, that's definitely a smoking jacket.
And nothing else.
And nothing else.
Yes, we're talking about The
I
Brood.
will have 3 snifters of brandy.
You can have the 3. Leave the bottle. He actually apparently got arrested because on a drunken dare, someone dared him to walk naked through like the center of town or something, and he got arrested.
He strikes me as a man who would be extremely comfortable naked in public.
Yeah, whether or not anybody else was comfortable.
No, I wasn't talking about anyone else. I just meant him.
Yeah, no, Oliver Reed, we can talk about him a bit more when we get into this, but legendary.
You're not going to hold that whisper the whole podcast.
I mean, if it would be better for everybody else, I'd be happy to do it. It's much easier on my voice.
No one is calling you daddy in this, though.
Damn it.
He gets called daddy so much in that movie.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Anyway, this is number 174 on our list. It has an 80% Rotten Tomatoes score with a 68% audience score. I just want to get into this a little bit because we don't usually do reviews on this. Do I want to save this? I'll save the review stuff for after we talk about it because I find it fascinating because it comes in 1979, right before the big horror boom of the 80s. And it has some quotes from Roger Ebert that I just find, for a guy that is so revered, I guess, as a movie critic.
Yes.
Dude's got some really intense puritanical opinions when it comes to movies like this in a way that I find very strange.
I mean, yeah. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what this is. So
yeah.
we'll hold that discussion for later.
It's nothing like groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of stuff he would level at like the Friday the 13th movies.
Right. This is grotesque pornography.
Essentially,
and has no merit as a film.
Yes. Yeah. But anyway, had you seen this before?
I had. I think I'd caught bits and pieces of it long ago, but the time I most remember seeing it was at one of our friends' houses or like a Halloween party or something. Ours and you and me? Really? Yeah, did you know we share friends?
I had heard tell, but I haven't met them yet.
I feel like it was maybe at our friend Laura's old apartment one time.
Okay.
I think.
Maybe a Halloween. Man, ooh.
Would
I have pulled out The Brood for a Halloween movie?
I think she did.
Okay. All right.
Plumbing the depths of the mental archives.
I'm trying to figure. There's such an interesting history. Such an interesting history of movies that we have chosen more or less by her.
Oh.
No, specifically by her.
Yes. Yes, she's a woman of varied tastes.
Yeah, my favorite being when we were doing our movie marathon, we were jumping houses, and she was like, she wanted to watch Valhalla Rising.
Oh.
Because it had Mads Mikkelsen and was about Vikings.
Yeah.
And she didn't last very long because it's not like
no.
It's not The Northman. Let's put it that way. It's a very brutal, ugly, slow art house movie about Vikings.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, but
But yes, I have seen The Brood in strange settings, which is very appropriate for watching The Brood.
Yes. I saw this, I think in college when I was starting to do deep dives on various filmmakers and stuff. And I think this is probably pretty early as I was getting into Cronenberg movies, because I think I probably saw The Fly first. and then kind of went backwards. And I think I was probably watching this around the same time as I was watching like Shivers and Rabid. And I always forget this is so early in his career, that this comes before. I probably watched this after Scanners. I think I watched Scanners first.
Yeah.
But I always forget that this was before Scanners, because I always think of Scanners as like his first big movie.
Yeah.
But this was after. The Scanners was after this.
Right.
But this was well, we'll get into his whole vibe in a minute, but this is very emblematic of his early days vibe, which is very unique.
Classic Cronenberg.
We're going to play the trailer for you real quick, and then we'll come back to talk about The Brood.
They come from the unknown, and they're here now, hiding, waiting to strike. You can feel their presence all around you. Never before have you come this close to the edge of terror. Never before have you faced anything so strange and sinister, so bizarre and unnerving. Never until now. David Cronenberg's The Brood.
Are you ready for me, Frank? I seem to be a very special person now. I'm in the middle of a strange adventure.
I want to go with you wherever you go.
Do you?
Yes.
Then look!
The Brood. You can run. You can hide and hope they won't find you. But you won't escape. Once unleashed, The Brood will destroy anyone who gets in their way. David Cronenberg's ultimate experience in inner terror, starring Oliver Reed and Samantha Eggar. The Brood. They're waiting for you.
Okay, The Brood, directed by David Cronenberg, written by David Cronenberg, starring Oliver Reed, Samantha Eggar, Art Hintel, Cindy Hines, who I found out today is also Johnny's tutoring student from The Dead Zone.
Oh,
the little blonde girl that he's tutoring is the same girl. And some dwarf killers. That is to say, dwarves who kill, not a killer who only targets dwarves.
Or like killer dwarfs. Like those are excellent.
Those are some killer dwarves you got there, Hal.
Yeah.
Amanda, what happens in The Brood?
A man tries to uncover an unconventional psychologist's therapy techniques on his institutionalized wife amidst a series of brutal murders.
Okay, sure.
Sorta.
Yeah.
All the summaries for this movie either give away way too much or way too little, as that one does.
Yeah.
But
it should just say, like, this one's pretty weird.
Yeah.
And then just leave it at that.
This one should be
they should,
women.
They should meet in the middle and do a synopsis like that one that highlights the, like, oh, there's a brutal murders. And then at the end, sentence number 2, this was pretty weird, guys.
This was pretty weird. This was a weird one.
Yes.
Well, some things you'll find in this movie include 70s New Aged guru retreats.
Yeah, he really goes at the self-help guru thing.
Yeah.
And like I feel like he's kind of, that's something he kind of cues into a lot in his movies, because Scanners has a bit of that in there. Videodrome very much has a bunch of that in there. He seems to be very suspicious of these cult-like
people who
groups.
promise they have the answers.
Yes.
Yes. You'll also find a mother-in-law with, quote, a large number of lovers, unquote.
Is that something you would ever want to know and something you would ever want to say or hear?
Personally, no.
Yeah. I mean, hey.
Not even a little.
Hey. What's his name? What's the guy's name? Peter? What's the main character's name in this movie?
Isn't it Frank?
Frank. Good on Frank for being progressive about
It's
his
the 70s, baby.
mother-in-law's,
We're all vaguely British and maybe Canadian.
yeah,
It's
just out there.
1970s.
One big key party.
You'll also find a lady mullet.
Very interesting haircut on the teacher in this movie that
Yes.
I'm going to assume was on purpose.
It looked pretty on purpose to me.
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to. I was joking. I've gone through many a hairstyle, and I have definitely grown my hair out and had a brief phase that probably looked somewhat like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wore headbands, handkerchiefs, anything I could to disguise my head.
Well,
Shame.
it might be one of those situations. Did you ever hear the story about that? That like asymmetrical haircut that was kind of, I don't know if that was an 80s thing.
Yeah,
where
it's
it was
been
like
around.
long on one side and then like chin length on the other
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
I heard the story of that was someone went in to get their hair done, had only half of it done, and then like had to leave because of an emergency. And then when the hairdresser called them up, was like, "Do you want to finish it?" They were like, "Actually, I kind of like it," so they just left it. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's a true story.
That is the most made up story I've ever heard in my life.
That's what I've heard.
You'll also find modernist crime scene outlines.
Yes, the body outline
Yes.
in tape
Yes.
in this was so methodically done.
Yes.
Every angle is a right angle.
They even did her arm that was like on top of the body that you usually wouldn't get in the outline. Usually it's just an outline of where the body was,
Right.
not like where each individual limb was placed.
Yes.
It was quite a work of art in my opinion.
It looked like a little pixelated man or woman in this
Yes,
case.
it did. You'll also find a standby autopsy guy.
Yeah, it's always great to have a guy you can call in the
Yeah.
middle of the night to
Do an autopsy on a child's dead body?
no questions asked.
Nope.
And when he tells you about the lack of naval, sexual, reproductive organs,
Yes.
and the gas tank on its back, does so completely stone-faced,
Yes.
not
Yes.
perplexed or anything.
No panic. No, this is a scientific anomaly that's going to put me on the map.
Nope.
Just
Nope.
here you go. This is what
That
it is.
scene almost felt like it was like a reshoot or something.
Yeah,
'Cause it
like a
does
late
feel-
edition or something. They were like, we got to make these kids creepier.
Or
somehow.
at the very least, someone was like, "Can you tell us what the fuck is going on with these things? Just anything."
The correct answer should have been no.
Yes.
And lastly, you will find questionable parenting.
Multi-generational questionable
Yes,
parenting. This
yes.
is
questionable parenting of humans, questionable parenting of brood babies.
yes.
Just all sorts of questionable parenting by Dr. Hal
The
Raglan.
real question is, what could these brood babies have done to better society if they
Yes.
had better brood baby
all right,
parenting?
all right, doctor, put the pipe down, please.
Well, if you just allow me to talk further about the potential of the brood baby. Yeah, because this movie, while the actual questionable parenting itself is not the most extreme,
No.
this is probably a top 5 movie for questionable parenting because it is essentially a dissertation on questionable parenting.
Right. It's in the top 5 because this whole movie is about parenting.
Yes.
And children, parents and children.
Yes.
That's what this whole movie is about. Whereas in other movies, we sort of see some questionable parenting that might be worse in terms of intensity, but it's sort of just like beside the point of the rest of the movie, or
Yeah, it's like
a-
yeah, of course you hang your kid upside down in a
Right.
cellar or something. Yeah, questionable, of course, obviously. But
Yeah. Of course, Leatherface's parents were questionable.
yeah, they
parenting
could have
him.
done a better job, sure.
Yes, but that's
But
kind
they're
of
not
not
dwelling
the
on it.
point of the movie.
Actually, in Texas Chainsaw, they seem to have a very
You gotta
well-adjusted
say it in
family.
Oliver Reed voice
Well,
if you're going to talk
actually,
like a
in
doctor.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the family presented as actually a very solid and strengthened family unit.
They
The one
moved
that-
through their rage,
One
would
that
you
just
say?
does not conform to our societal norms, and therefore they are presented as outcasts.
Even your dog is confused at what you're doing right now.
So this is very commonly regarded to be David Cronenberg's dissertation on the divorce he was going through at the time, which he himself has also said. He said this was kind of his reaction to Kramer, his version of Kramer versus Kramer, because he thought Kramer versus Kramer was too optimistic. And while I don't disagree,
sure,
I actually don't think that this is as much about divorce, because I feel like that's the easy way thing to put on this movie.
Sure, yeah.
But it seems more to me about being in a relationship with someone you don't understand anymore.
Yeah.
And who has kind of gone off the deep end. I know that sounds reductive, but there's a line in the movie that pretty much sums it up that I'll read later. But
sure.
I was surprised watching it this time how much it felt less like, oh, this is a divorce movie, and more like this is a I don't know who this person is anymore type movie.
Yeah, it's so interesting because watching this movie again made me realize how little Frank, our main character, and Nola, how little Frank and Nola actually interact in this movie.
They only have one scene at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't even they talk on the phone maybe like once before or something.
Yes.
But they are not, it's not about their relationship so much as it is about the kind of the aftermath already. Like what by the time we meet these characters, Nola has already been in treatment. Like she is sequestered. She's in isolation in some sort of intensive psychotherapy treatment. Frank has been single parenting their daughter and just like going about his life. And he's clearly planning for a divorce.
Yeah.
He is on the side of like this marriage is over. We need to settle this and split everything up and have stability, and I want custody of Candy. And that's where we start.
Right.
We never see these two people in love. We never see them interacting. We don't even see them fighting.
Right, yeah.
Like, there's no breakup here.
Yeah.
They're already, whether Nola realizes it or not, they're already broken up. And so what we see instead is the result that both of their behaviors have had on their daughter and the struggle to fully separate, I think, from one another.
Yeah.
Like,
I know we're jumping right into the deep end here, but
it's hard not to with this movie. I don't really know where to start other than the deep end.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me is like I feel like what makes this, so I think this is something we can kind of cut open if we want to, because movies about divorce made by one of the two parties who are going through divorce tend to be slightly one-sided.
You don't say.
We'll probably mention Possession quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because they kind of this would be a hell of a twofer at the drive-in.
Oh my God. I don't think I could do it.
But Possession, when we were talking about Possession on Patreon, one of the things that stood out to us about Possession is that it doesn't really posit either side being 100% correct or without blame. And this is weird because I think that's what stops me from saying, oh, this is a divorce movie, because divorce movies are usually like, lots of fighting, lots of tearing it apart.
Yeah.
And like Frank doesn't hate Nola. Like, it's not like we're watching him go through this thing where he like hates her and can't wait to get out. Like he honestly doesn't know what's going on with her, and they have grown apart clearly. Yeah. But I wouldn't say that he hates her the way that you would get in most divorce metaphor allegory stories.
Sure. I don't think he hates her in that sort of cliched way, but I do think he has contempt for her.
Sure. Okay.
Like, I think there's a level of, I just want to be fucking done with this woman. Like, I don't think he has a lot of empathy for her. I don't think he has any pity for her. I think he's just like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
I want to get away from you. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want to think about you anymore. I don't want you in my life.
Yeah.
And to have that full of a wall come down between you and somebody you ostensibly used to love enough that you married her and had a child with her and were with her for years, there has to be, I think, an underlying level of just like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he's not enraged over it, but I think he has, I think contempt's the best word I can come up with for it, where it's just sort of a cold contempt. And at the end, when he sees her in the climactic scene in the work shed, he is disgusted by her.
Yeah.
There is a level of revulsion from him towards her.
It's pretty gross.
It is, but I think it's already there.
Yeah, it's funny because
like, deep down, I think he's already repulsed by her.
Yeah, it's funny because as I was watching that scene this time, the lines that he has that he's telling to her, he's obviously doing it because he's trying to keep her calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about it. I was like, I feel like there's almost another version of this movie where he's not lying, where it's like the end is he's like, you know what? I'm sorry. I get it now. I understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That's obviously not the way they go here. But yeah, it is. I find it unique that, as you were kind of saying, we kind of come in after the breakup has happened.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's where his attitude is coming from, where he's past the breakup and now he's in the state of mind where he's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on with her. She's got the kid this weekend. I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
And I think that is pretty relatable in some ways. Like, if you've ever been in a serious relationship that went wrong in the end and you broke up and you were with the person for long enough, you have, like overlapping things in your life or overlapping social circles.
Sure.
And then when you're the party in the breakup that is more ready to move on, the other person's emotions start to feel ridiculous to you.
Yeah.
At times.
Yeah.
It's just like, do we really have to talk about this again? We've been broken up for 6 months. Can you please just stop? Like, I've had enough. I don't want to relitigate it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Why can't you move on? And it's because she's not ready to move on. She wants them to stay together.
Yeah.
Her fantasies and dreams when she talks to Dr. Raglan are, I had the most lovely dream. Frank and I were back together and we were with Candy. It was just the three of us and everything was great. Like, that's what she wants.
Yeah.
And he wants the exact opposite. But he's already so settled in what he wants that there is no conversation to be had anymore.
Yeah.
I think.
Because there is this thread going through as well. And I think maybe this is kind of why I was thinking, I wonder if there's a different version of this where Frank is a little actually honestly more sympathetic towards her at the end, where I don't even know if he knows the history of Nola's mother being abusive towards her. Does he know that? I can't remember if he knows that.
I don't know if I don't think we're ever told explicitly what he does or does not know, but I know there's a moment where Nola is talking to the doctor and says, he thinks I'm turning into my mother. Mm-hmm. He thinks I want to make Candy another baby Nola. Mm-hmm. And that's the last thing I want. So, like, she's projecting all of this onto him, but it does imply that he's at least aware that her mother was not a good mother. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I don't know how deep does it go. And I'm also really curious in this movie, do you think we're supposed to believe Grandma Juliana's version of events or Nola's version of events in Nola's childhood?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because everything is hearsay.
Yeah, because
from highly unreliable narrators.
Nola is talking about it as though she was severely beaten
and pushed down the stairs and all of these, and that's why she kept ending up in the hospital. Whereas the grandmother talks to Candy about it and says she used to get these weird rashes. And the doctors couldn't figure out what it was, so we'd have to bring her to the hospital. Well,
what it was psychoplasmics.
Yes. Obviously.
Psychoplasmics.
Yes.
This has one of the weirder openings to any movie. Where,
oh my God, I love it, though.
We cut in. I mean, is there... Man, you want to talk about ASMR. Is there a better, more soothing... soothing while also, exciting way to to start a
Okay.
movie than fade in on Oliver Reed just whispering you through your internal pain, getting you to externalize it. It's just such a weird ass opening
Because
and,
it's Oliver Reed and his patient
mm-hmm.
sitting on the floor of a stage in an auditorium
Yeah.
in karate gis, it
Yep.
looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting on the floor facing one another and having what is a very strange therapy session in front of an audience.
Yes. And I couldn't tell if that was I'm assuming this is like I couldn't tell if they were doing this for show or if this is just like the group session.
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I feel like when the patient pulls his shirt down and he's covered in these like welts or whatever,
Mhm.
I could be misremembering, but I feel like people gasped.
Yeah, I
Like
think
there was
you're right.
there was sort
Yeah.
of a crowd
This
reaction
feels-
of like,
it feels like this is some sort of presentation
Yes.
of what psychoplasmics is.
yes, he's showing people what his method can do
Mm-hmm.
and how it works in order to draw in, I don't know, funding, publicity.
Yeah.
It's some pull more people into his sort of quasi cult practice.
Mm.
I don't know.
It's such a what he's doing. He's got this thing that is it's essentially like the extreme depiction of the effects of stress and anger on the body
Yeah.
that become literalized through, I guess, the lymphatic system, some explosion of the lymphatic, some David Cronenberg
Yeah.
body horror
Yeah,
bullshit.
you just have to do your very normal exercises of
rolling
rolling
around.
back and forth on your floor to make sure your lymph
because
system.
that's one of those, that scene is one of those perfect David Cronenberg scenes
Mm-hmm.
where it's like this weird guy rolling around. He's got this giant tumor on his neck.
But he's
and,
got it covered with a towel, but he's in a beige tracksuit.
and what he's talking about
Mm-hmm.
is this concept that the lymphatic system in the body is like a secondary circulatory system,
Yes.
but there's no heart.
Yes.
There's no heart pumping it.
Yes.
And like that's such a thing that I'm like I 100% understand him cueing in on this thing where it's like
Yes.
there's a second system in your body
yes.
that has no heart that
that like nobody knows really how it works
that
or what it
operates in
does.
parallel to this other system. Yeah.
Yes, and that's kind of the seed that creates the rest of the movie.
Yes.
Like I think that little monologue from that guy is kind of like in Cronenberg's mind, it is the underpinnings of the whole film.
Yes. That and the other line, which is a man who got involved with a woman who married you for your sanity, hoping it would rub off. Like that's the one line where I'm like, okay, that's the line where I feel like he's really taking it to his wife there.
Yeah, and but jumping back to the idea that this is less about less of a divorce movie and more about parenthood and children. There is that amazing dialogue between Frank when it's like we've gotten into the movie a little bit. We've sort of been introduced to Dr. Raglan and his process. We've been introduced to Nola and the fact that she's his patient. And we've seen that Candy, the little 5-year-old girl, is getting abused somehow. There's bruises and scratches all over her back. And that is the central conflict of the movie.
So here's a question I was thinking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Do we ever find out what's causing those bruises and scratches?
Not for sure.
Yeah. I didn't think so because
No.
it's such an inciting kind of incident
Yeah.
that kind of just falls to the wayside.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's another one that kind of goes back to my, like, are we supposed to believe Nola? Are we supposed to believe Juliana?
Mhm.
Is Nola, and then are we supposed to believe Nola when it comes to Candy, or are we supposed to believe Frank, who thinks Nola is beating her? Nola doesn't think she's beating her. She doesn't understand why Candy's getting hurt. It
Yeah.
could be the Brood kids.
The thing that I find so fascinating about this movie is I think you watch this movie and you get it. You get what's going on.
Yeah.
And what I don't know if you realize until you sit down and think about it, is how little information you actually get about what the fuck's going on.
Yes, and like who are these people to one another really, and how were their relationships before everything fell apart?
Yeah.
This movie doesn't provide you with any of that context. We don't know how Frank and Nola met. We don't know what attracted them to one another. We don't know if they were actually genuinely happy and in love. And maybe things were going really well for a long time.
Yeah.
And then maybe there was some sort of inciting incident. Like, and what was that incident? How did Nola end up put in treatment and Frank trying to divorce her? Was her mother really abusing her? Was her mother a Munchausen by proxy kind of person? Was Nola actually going through some sort of unknown physical ailment? Do Dr. Raglan's practices work?
I don't know what they're well, the only other patient we see is the guy from the beginning.
Yeah.
Who is essentially a psychoplasmic's version of Bill Murray from What About Bob?
Yes.
And I don't know if he's being helped. He seems to be.
He doesn't seem like.
He seems to be addicted to the process.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we see the goiter guy too.
Right. Who says that it's cancerous and it's spreading throughout his body.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it's a good thing, but also like, how is he doing it?
Yeah.
And like we don't get any answers to any of that.
I'm not totally sure what the benefit is of.
Right, that's my question.
Literalizing your pain.
Yeah.
In sores and creepy little monster children.
Because if there is a benefit, it would be to externalize it and then literally heal from it.
Right.
And then be able to, because you've rid your inner body of it, it doesn't hold you back anymore.
Yes.
That would make sense to me if that were the goal. But we don't ever see an example of like, this has actually worked for somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, sort of, we do. If we want to recenter ourselves here a little bit, because we're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
The main thrust of this movie is that Nola, Frank's wife Nola, has been seeing the psychoplasmics guru, Dr. Raglan, for who knows how long. Raglan has taken some sort of liking to her because she's this special case. And the reason she's such a special case is through apparently whatever psychoplasmics is.
Yep.
She has been externalizing her pain and trauma into the asexual creation of little rage monsters.
Yes.
That look a lot like her little daughter.
Who looks a lot like her when she was little.
Who apparently come pre-stocked with little tiny snowsuits. I don't know if that's if that grows on them. Yeah. Or if they just have like a closet full of them.
Because we kind of only see one when it's brand new.
Right.
And then we see them when they already are running around in the world.
They've all got pajamas too, because they get the pajamas at the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like Raglan is doing this thing at the beginning because he's like, I need money to pay for all the tiny clothes.
For all of the little bitty snowsuits that we need.
But you could argue that his methods are working in a twisted way because what she is doing is the therapy that he is trying to give her is eliminating her trauma and pain by these little rage monsters going out and killing the sources of it. Because we've got that scene where she calls the house and the teacher answers.
Yep.
And she thinks that Frank is having an affair with this woman. And then next thing you know, little rage monsters kill the teacher.
Yep.
And then the next time we see Nola, she's like, I just don't feel like she's a threat to me anymore. Like it's the...
Right, but it's also, it's still the question of, is it helping her? Like,
sure, that's definitely still a question. Yeah.
Good for anyone to go through this. Like,
right.
Does anybody come out the other side a well-adjusted individual who is capable of living in society?
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no as well.
Probably not. Although the goiter guy seemed pretty well adjusted. He was just, dying. But
I don't know, man. Rolling around on the floor talking about your lymphatic system.
Got to be interested
just
in something.
Just a normal Tuesday for you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Wednesday usually.
That's lymphatic system day.
Yeah.
Monday is leg day.
Yep.
Tuesday is chest and shoulders. Wednesday is your lymph system.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Just massaging different points on my neck and under my armpits.
But there's this scene where Frank brings Candy to Nola's mother to babysit. And when he's dropping her off, Nola's mother has obviously been drinking and is obviously drinking more. And she starts talking about being a parent and says something to Frank like, well, you don't understand what it's like to be a parent whose child blames you for everything. And there's a couple lines that I really enjoyed that were 30 seconds after you're born, you have a past.
Yeah.
And 60 seconds after that, you're lying to yourself about it.
Yes.
And she starts talking about how children...
Just like the most cynical thing a mother could possibly say.
I know, but this is why it's so great, because I think it gives a lot of insight into how Cronenberg's approaching like women, motherhood, parents in general. All of that's kind of encapsulated in this little monologue that she has, because then she starts saying that you look at yourself as your child sees you in the past and you can't even recognize yourself.
Yes.
The way they twist it.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because that's such a fucked up way to think about kids.
Yeah, but I mean, it isn't incorrect though, right? Because
I think it's a gross oversimplification.
well, I guess it's sort of like the idea of the person that your child thinks that you are is not necessarily the person you know yourself to be.
Sure.
Right? Because it's only born of the experiences that the two of you have together, which is can be completely separate from the rest of your life, you know?
Absolutely. And I think in a normal and relatively healthy parent-child relationship, that kind of stuff is like when your kids realize that their grandparent is your mommy.
Sure, yeah.
You know, it's those sorts of things. When they realize that, you know, for me it would be, you know, if I had a kid and they were like, Uncle Chris, wait, Uncle Chris is your brother? Like, that's sort of realizing that you had a life before them.
But he's here a lot.
Yeah.
One of those guys.
But that's not what she's saying. She's specifically...
You should not call him uncle. If he's telling you to do that, do not do it. Sorry.
Don't be alone in a room with him. But it's she's couching it entirely as they blame you for everything.
Sure, yeah.
And turning it into this fully negative thing. Like, the way children see you is that you are bad and wrong.
Right.
And I think typically the opposite is the case, that your children usually think that you're the best, or that you're supposed, that you know everything because you're your mom or your dad or you're the parent. You know everything, what you say goes. And so when you find out that your parents are fallible and can make mistakes and can be wrong, that's a big developmental milestone for most kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is having that moment. It's other than, because before that you have full confidence in your parent that they know everything and they're going to protect you and take care of you. Right. And in this movie, that's not the case.
Yeah, you know, it's very dark in that respect, but I kind of really I respect it going there.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, it's the kind of thing that I think like a lot of parents probably think, but they don't want to say it. Yeah. You know, thinking, giving voice to these negative thoughts and connotations of parenting that you're supposed to just kind of tamp down and hope for the best. But I like that he's taking this opportunity to really just like crack that shit open. Yeah. And be like, you know what, let's just get into it.
Absolutely, because I do think there are many situations where people do remember things differently than their parents.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of a friend specifically who has had kind of an ongoing conflict with her parents, who she's otherwise very close to, where something from our childhoods, they do not remember the way she remembers. And it's an ongoing thing that they kind of every so often it comes back up to the fore, even if they you know, she sort of gets to a point where it's like, I can't push harder on this. Like, I have to let it go. For my own sake, I have to let it go. But in her mind, she very clearly remembers them behaving in a certain way, and they very clearly do not.
Yeah.
And so I find that fascinating because it does happen. So you're right. It's worth digging into. I do want to say, I also think that, like, Frank is not a good dad. He's all right. I think he does okay, but he's not.
No,
like,
well, he's such a weird character.
Yeah.
And I've seen this movie get criticized because he is, you can read it as he is the stand-in for Cronenberg himself in the situation. And there's not a lot of blame to be put on him, which I don't know. Again, I think that's reading this too much as a straight divorce story, where I think we're past that into this, like, I don't know what the fuck's going on section.
Yeah.
and I think it's strange because he doesn't really do a lot. You know, he's just kind of, he's proactive when he sees the bruises on Candy.
Yeah. Does he take her to the doctor?
I can't remember. I know he's taking pictures of the bruises.
But I don't think he, like, takes her to a
No, because I think he goes
straight to his lawyer.
The lawyer, and then to Raglan, I think.
Yeah, he goes straight to his lawyer to be like, this is grounds that I should get sole custody.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a throwaway comment when he first meets the teacher, and she's like, well, you don't come to the parent-teacher conferences, so I need to talk to you about your daughter. And he's just like, yeah, sure. And then he drops her off with her.
What are you doing later? Do you want to watch my kid?
Yeah. And then he drops her off with the visibly drunk grandma.
Yeah, you're right. He's not a great
He's not great. I mean, there are obviously worse options in this poor little girl's life.
Yeah.
But
do you think the movie is oblivious to the fact that he's kind of shitty, or do you think it's? I mean, it's not drawing attention to it, but he's clearly kind of doing shitty stuff.
It's really fascinating because
neutrally shitty, if that's the thing.
Yeah. Shitty neutral instead of chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think this all ties into the fact that in a different movie, the character of Frank would drive me insane because he has zero personality and zero chemistry with anyone.
Yep.
But in this movie, it kind of works.
So he's a prototypical early Cronenberg character.
Yes, and a Stephen King protagonist in many of the Stephen King movies, and some other movie protagonists we've encountered where it's just like generic dude.
Man, wait till we get to fucking Scanners, man. Ugh. I love Scanners, but the lead of that movie is such a drag. He's so boring.
It's a curse. But it kind of weirdly is okay in this movie. I don't know if it's because everyone else around him is such a character. Or if it's because it's kind of like, yeah, I can see why, given his circumstances, he's maybe not the most fun guy to be around right now. You know, he's been in this relationship where he's watched his wife. I mean, I'm assuming that there was a gradual degrading of her mental health.
Who's to say? Once maybe she just got her hands on the fuck is the name
Shape
of that?
Of Rage.
The Shape of Rage.
And
by
was
Dr.
just like,
Raglan.
this is me.
I mean, it's possible.
This is me now. But at minimum, she's been in treatment for a long time. It sounds like several weeks, couple months, whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess in a way it makes sense to me that he's so closed off and withdrawn as a person. But also it's a very Cronenberg thing, I think, to have all of your characters sort of have these formal relationships with one another. And I don't mean formal as in like polite society formal. I mean like an official relationship to one another. Like
tuxedos.
This is my tuxedos.
Black tie relationships.
But no pants.
Nope.
You know, this is my lawyer. This is my doctor. This is my
right. Yeah.
mother-in-law. It's all very in a sort of societal structure, but there's no emotional relationships between anybody.
Yeah, we don't even really know if there are any stressors on him.
Yeah, what's his job? Where are his parents?
Yeah, who cares? Doesn't matter.
Does he have friends?
I don't know. Probably not.
Do they live in a house or an apartment?
The number is 34. I know that because it's giant and on the window of the door.
Yeah, but we don't know anything about his life outside of this very specific circumstance we're seeing him in.
It's great.
And it kind of is because it does make sense why he's so emotionally distant from everybody, because everyone we see him dealing with in this movie are law officials, doctors, his soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law and ex-father-in-law, his daughter's teacher. Like, everyone is at an emotional remove from him already.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I typically don't love main characters like this who are milquetoast and very bland. But in this movie, I'm like, well, I mean, the only character he should be having an emotional reaction to really is Candy.
Yeah. Don't you mean you don't want a scene where he's like at his job and he has like
answering phones,
an emotional speech with his coworker about how hard it is.
The guy in the cubicle next door being like, "Hey Frank, you've seemed a little off your game lately. You're not making enough sales. What's going on with you, man?" Yeah,
I mean, how is he going to climb the corporate ladder when his ex-wife is making rage babies?
Right.
That's the movie.
You can't be a single dad.
No.
Men can't just take care of kids.
You can listen to Salisbury Hill as much as you want. It's not going to fix your problems. This isn't a movie. Well, it is a movie, but it does present him as, I think there's two ways to look at it, because I think it does present him as being a sort of a cipher of a character.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think what you're saying, it presents him in a real transitional period.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't seem to have these. It's the kind of transitional period you might be in if you were getting divorced or have just gotten divorced.
Yeah, where you kind of by necessity and maybe even a little bit by choice have emotionally disconnected and shut yourself down a little bit because you can only deal with so much at a time and you just need to get through whatever is happening right now, which is out of your control and you don't really understand and you don't want to have to care anymore.
Right. And I think there's so much. I think one person could say this movie, well, I don't know, because I don't know if I've ever seen anybody criticize this movie for not telling you enough of what's going on, because I think it's just such a weird roller coaster of like stuff.
I'm sure there are plenty of people out there on the internet.
Yeah, I'm sure
like,
everybody's got
wait a minute.
Everybody's got a shitty
Why
take about
didn't
something.
they explain this, and this? But I don't think anyone's chomping at the bit to see more of Frank's personal life.
No, but I think what you do get is that wonderful gray area where you can kind of make your own assumptions about, the first thing that you hear about Nola's mom is that she's got a bunch of boyfriends, and you're not really sure what that means.
I'm sorry. It was
I'm sorry.
A large number of lovers.
Yes. I mean, she's a very attractive woman, but just for Frank.
Yeah. Hey, at least it's not his mother.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, he says that. Now I'm thinking about it. He says that. I don't know. Is he kind of into her? Who knows?
She seemed a little into him.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm talking about. So
they were the closest thing to chemistry that this whole movie had.
That's very true. but even so, it's like that's kind of your introduction to the grandmother character, and then with no mention of how that relates to her own relationship, and then you meet her ex-husband.
Yes.
They've been separated.
Yes.
He comes in with his own like unique emotional state
Yep.
that never gets explained. I'm not saying you need to explain it, but it's like he comes in a very specific mindset where he's reacting to something that maybe we haven't necessarily been told what he's reacting to, but it's,
but
it has
by
to
the
do
time
with the
he's
death of his ex-wife and and it allows you to kind of it's kind of giving you the edges of the story, and you can kind of fill it in how you want. I just watched for the first time the John Ford Western The Searchers, which is big for me because I fucking hate John Wayne. But one of the things that was so interesting about that movie is how much stuff. I actually didn't even really like pick up on this stuff. I was reading up on it afterwards, but how much stuff is in that movie for you to find if you're looking for it, but they don't ever really come out and talk about it. So the main thrust of the story, I won't go too far off topic here, but it's John Wayne, Confederate soldier after the war. He's coming home. His niece gets kidnapped by Comanche Indians who also kill her family. And so then he and this other quote unquote half-breed. Yeah, a lot of that going on.
Oh, boy.
Have to go off and save her. And what's different about it that caught my attention, because I hate John Wayne, is that the character he's playing is explicitly racist. Like, it's on purpose.
Yeah, ex-Confederate soldier.
Right.
Makes sense.
But he explicitly fucking hates Indians in a way that is very unusual for a John Wayne character.
Yeah, and for Westerns in general.
Yeah. And like, to the point where everybody else is like, geez, fucking cool, Ethan.
Take it down
like,
a notch.
There's a very famous scene where they're tracking down and they find this grave and they open the grave and it was a Comanche who had been killed and they're kind of taking away what they will. And then he's like, why don't you finish the job? And he shoots the dead body in the eyes because if they don't have their eyes, they can't get to Native American heaven, essentially. That's how much he fucking hates these Indians.
Wow.
And so there's so much of that, like, boiling under the surface. And then, like, you kind of, you're kind of getting through these things that they're showing you, but not really expanding on that. He kind of is in love with his brother's wife, and maybe that this girl that he's trying to find is actually his daughter. And, like, the fact that she ends up living with the Comanches.
Yeah.
Brings him to the point where he would rather kill her than bring her home.
Yeah.
And so there's like so much other shit going on inside of this story that's essentially the Indians kidnapped my niece. We need to go save my niece.
Right. Which when you just say the summary could sound like a really simplistic kind of old school narrative of a John Wayne movie, but then you add in all this other stuff and it's it's that was my ham-fisted way to get the searchers into this conversation. But like that's I always find that stuff so fun to dig into and very rewarding. Yeah.
And I think it's tough with Cronenberg because on the surface, a character like Frank just feels very clinical.
Yeah.
Like it feels like, because that's one of the things that I've heard leveled against this, and I would love to hear what you think about this, is that this is a very misogynistic movie. And it is the kind of movie where it's like it was made by someone going through a divorce. And so the male character in the movie never does anything wrong and is kind of like fine.
Yeah.
But it's the woman, it's the wife that's the monster.
Yeah.
And while on the surface, I can't disagree with that, I don't know if I would say I think that's giving it too little credit. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting question. I can definitely see it because Nola literally is the monster.
Right. Yeah.
You know, she is disgusting and everyone is kind of disgusted by her. And whatever's happening to her, whatever she's doing with the external womb and having these brood children, it doesn't strike me that she actually has a ton of control over it. It seems sort of like an instinctive process that's been happening to her.
I don't even know if she knows what happens to these little goblins. Like they keep them in upstairs.
Yeah.
But does she hang out with them? Or is it just like once it's out of the little egg sac thing, it's like, hey, you're on your own? Or does she forget? Is she even really conscious of what she's doing? Right.
And that's all very much left up for debate. You know, we see her in the sort of climactic scene where Frank is trying to keep her pacified so that Dr. Raglan can sneak upstairs to where all the little goblin children are and rescue Candy and get out safely before they attack him.
Yeah.
And we see her give birth to one of these creatures, and she sort of starts licking it clean in a way that is very normal for mammals.
That was apparently her idea.
That's a great idea.
That was the actress's idea.
She's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because it's something that, you know, if you ever see like in a movie, if a horse in a barn gives birth, and they never show the full birth, but then they show afterwards this adorable baby horse, and the mom is like licking it clean.
Right, yeah.
And that's a very normal thing for like animals to do.
Right, yeah.
But seeing her doing it, it's disgusting to watch.
Yep.
And Frank watches her and is disgusted by it. And she, up until that point, it has kind of... I think she's skeptical of him the whole time when he's like, yes, I am here for you. I want to see what you're going through and I want to go through it with you. And he's very bad at selling it. But I think she's kind of hopeful during that scene. I think she kind of wants him. I think she's skeptical of him, but she wants to be proven wrong. And then she's doing something that I'm sure to her in her current state and mindset feels very natural. She had this baby. She's cleaning her baby.
Right.
And she catches the look on his face when he's watching her. And that's when she's like, oh no, I disgust you. You hate me. It's like she has a realization that she's like, cannot deny it any longer because she can see him right in front of her.
Yeah.
Rejecting her. And so it's sort of like, this is a very long-winded way of saying that she's grotesque and she's monstrous and the things the brood children are doing on her behalf are horrible, but she's not telling them, hey kids, go kill my mom.
Right.
And she doesn't really seem to understand that they have been out there wreaking havoc on anybody.
Right, yeah.
And she doesn't really seem to understand that there's anything weird that's happening. She's like, no, this is my baby.
She's in treatment.
Yes.
She thinks what she is doing is like progress.
Yes.
That's how deep she is into the psychoplasmic shit.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to think about it from that standpoint where it's like, yeah, what she's doing is outwardly monstrous, but they make it fairly clear that she doesn't have any clue about what's happening because of it.
Right.
She's clearly like off the deep end.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. She needs help.
Yeah.
Professional help, preferably not of the psychoplasmic type. But she never hurts anybody.
Right, yeah.
Like, we never see her attack anyone. We never see her harm anybody. The brood does. And that could be, that is definitely based off of her subconscious wishes.
Yeah.
But she doesn't intentionally hurt anyone. Of her and Frank, the only person we see intentionally hurt somebody is Frank strangles her to death.
That's true, yeah.
He murders her.
Right.
She technically doesn't murder anybody.
Yeah. You could argue that, this is one of those things where it's like, I think there's plenty of room to get into this if they had wanted to, or if you wanted to think about it. You could argue that the person who's the cause of all this murder is Raglan.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what their relationship is. Is he, so the thing that they don't get into, this psychoplasmics thing.
Yeah.
Is this something that is always there? I mean, it must be, because at the end you get the warts on Candy's arm.
Yeah.
But he's clearly has he taken a liking to Nola because she is the most powerful he's ever seen and he needs to like wrangle this? Or because he has caused her to progress into this thing?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. It's unclear.
Right.
It's really unclear whether or not she was on this path already to begin with and he is just trying to contain it.
Right.
Or if he is the cause of it. Has he brought her far enough into this process that this is the result?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I get the impression that he wants to focus on her because she is capable of doing something he's never seen before.
Right, yeah.
Other people go through this process and they affect their own bodies. She goes through this process and creates entirely new ones.
Yes.
That are outward manifestations of her id, essentially, of her like subconscious wants and desires. And so I can see, especially for a psychologist who's probably super into Freud and all of that, this is probably extraordinarily fascinating and a breakthrough in sort of the connection between mind and body. And
you never really ever get the sense that he's like, I feel like the scene that's would usually be in this is where he's like, you know, he gives Frank the brush off and then he turns to his little blonde friend there.
Yeah.
And he says, he's like, we can't let her go now. I haven't even finished my next book yet. Like that kind, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. You never get the like sense that he is just like a sinister caricature.
Yeah.
It's really left up to a question of like, does he genuinely think he's helping her?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
I do think it's interesting because everyone who is murdered because he brings them up.
Sure. Yes. True. Yeah.
You know, so the way his therapy works is that he sort of role plays as the person from your life who you're having complicated feelings about or trauma around, right?
Man, he can drop you into that shit at the drop, like in snap of the finger. He just walks in and he's like, "It's Daddy," and she's like, "Daddy."
I know.
Oh.
He just really likes being called Daddy.
Now I'm Frank. Oh my God, Frank! You bastard!
Now I'm your mother.
Mommy, how could you? He's that good.
Yeah. He pretends to be everyone in her life, and he even pretends to be Ms. Raymer or Raymond or whatever the teacher's name is, and that's how the teacher gets murdered. That's how she gets murdered.
Right?
Is that he brings her up after Nola's called the house and the teacher picked up.
What do you think of him as a character? Do you like him? I mean, is it
Raglan?
Yeah. Is he a good character, or is he 98% Oliver Reed being charming?
I mean, I think it's 90% Oliver Reed being charming. Maybe not quite 98.
Yeah. He's definitely. It's definitely let's get some gravitas in here to do the heavy lifting for this, I think.
Yes. And I think a different actor wouldn't pull it off quite so well without slipping into a caricature. But he is so much fun to watch.
He's so great. I love Oliver Reed so much.
And it's so hard to separate. Is he so fun to watch because this is a good character and it's well written, or is he so fun to watch because this is Oliver Reed?
I would say there are few actors who are as engaging to watch when they're not doing anything as they are when they're saying words and doing stuff.
Yeah.
Oliver Reed is someone who you can watch him just stare blankly and be entertained. I don't know what it is.
He's the type of actor where it makes me understand the concept of stage presence.
Yes.
In a way that I think other actors or people get that attributed to them sometimes, and I think they don't fully deserve it. But I think he is kind of the epitome of it in a lot of ways.
He understands screen acting. Like this whole performance from him, I think, is kind of a masterclass in screen acting because he is so incredibly still and he is so incredibly quiet.
Yeah.
Like the whole movie, he never raises his voice unless the part where he's screaming at the guy, that whatever. But even there,
you can be Michelle.
Yeah, even there, it's like he's not really going that big.
No,
but every other scene he's in, he's just very, very quiet.
Yeah. My favorite line delivery in this entire movie, and this movie has some great lines in it, is right before the climax when Frank has gone back to the center to the work shed, and he's kind of looking around. And then Dr. Raglan steps around from a corner and just goes, "Frank, I have a gun."
Frank, I have a gun. Yes.
And it's that same, like, they're outside, so he's not quite a whisper, but he's still very quiet and he's very measured, and there's no need to panic.
Yeah.
But I have a gun.
That was one of those scenes where I'm watching this going, like, if this was real life, I don't know if Frank could hear a word he's saying because he's like 20 feet away.
Yes, and he's just, "Frank, I have a gun."
It reminds me the bad version of this is, did you see Bohemian Rhapsody?
No.
There's a scene in Bohemian Rhapsody where Freddie Mercury's lover has walked out on him and it is pouring rain.
Is this a Baz Luhrmann?
No, this is it's a whole. It started as a Bryan Singer movie, but then he got jettisoned.
Good.
But his lover has walked out, and Freddie has followed him to the door. Right, so this scene takes place outside, pouring rain, incredibly loud pouring rain. His lover has walked, I'm going to say conservatively, 50 yards away.
Conservatively?
Yes. And he has his back to Freddie Mercury. And they are talking to each other through this downpour 50 yards away with his back to him in like normal talking voice. And they're just cutting to close-ups.
Like you and I, who are 5 feet away from one another, are speaking louder.
Yes,
yeah.
And they're cutting to close-ups of these two talking to each other, and I was like, "What the fuck is?" I don't know if they're trying to make a point here or something, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But this is one where I spent the whole movie thinking about the guy doing sound for this. It's like, do they have to? Does
Keep
he have
adjusting in one direction for Oliver Reed, and then adjusting in a different direction for everyone else?
Does he get his own mic? Does he get his own boom guy?
No one in this movie, other than Nola, really gets emotional.
Right, Nola gets pretty big, especially.
Yeah.
Well, I do. Before we jump on, I want to talk about Candy a little bit because I find her interesting the way that she's portrayed. But Oliver Reed is, man, he's got his whole everything I've ever seen him in is just charisma on display.
Yes.
And I highly recommend. I thought as we were getting ready to talk about this, I was like, oh man, I'm so glad we get to talk about Oliver Reed. I forgot we did The Devils already.
Yes.
Which is again fantastic Oliver Reed performance.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned it in that episode, but I don't know if this is true. This is another story that is probably apocryphal, but I could have sworn I heard
that one time he got an asymmetrical haircut.
Well, no, I'm almost positive that on the Gladiator commentary, Ridley Scott tells the story of how Oliver Reed died, because he died while they were shooting Gladiator.
Oh shit.
And I believe the story that is out there is that Oliver Reed, he was a notorious alcoholic, like really, really bad. If you go on YouTube, you can find a very famous talk show appearance where he is lit.
Eesh.
And it is not great
Eesh.
for anybody who's there. But apparently the story is that while they were filming in like Malta or whatever for Gladiator, he was going out getting shit-faced with these Marines or Navy guys who were stationed, and the legend is that he went out drinking at this bar the whole night, was doing shots and challenging these Marines to arm wrestling contests, and then he dropped dead of a heart attack.
Oh my God!
Which I hope is true. I'm pretty sure that's the story Ridley Scott tells. So I'm going to say that if that's the case, that's the one I'm going to believe.
If it were like instantaneous, I feel like that's kind of a fun way to go.
If you got to go with a smile, as
exactly.
as the Joker once said.
Yeah, out having fun.
Joker's plastic surgeon, technically, but anyway, Candy.
Yes, Candy.
Candy,
and all the other little goons.
Yeah, Candy's interesting because I said this jokingly as we were watching it, but I said he really found a way to get around dealing with a child actor by just having them be catatonic basically the whole movie.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because she very much ends up being treated like a prop.
Yes.
Which feels like it's probably by design. Either that or Cronenberg's like, I don't know how to write a kid.
What do children like? Do they like snowsuits?
Snowsuits, yeah.
That's it. That's all he had.
Yeah,
that's all he had. Candy is interesting because she's not interesting. Do you know what I mean? Like they do not give her a personality the same as they do not give Frank a personality. It's the one thing that makes them seem related.
Yes, yeah.
Is that neither one of them can emote. And it's an interesting question because is this a result of the fact that she's grown up in a home with a mom like Nola? Or is it a result of the fact that she's now growing up in a broken home? Right.
Yeah, because you could extrapolate out that the reason she's acting or not acting the way that she is because she's on the back end of a pretty fucked up breakup.
Right. And then she does mirror her mother, or at least what we hear about Nola. And through the therapy sessions, there's definitely Nola's unresolved issue with her own father is that she felt like he should have protected her from her mother.
Yep.
And this is a case where Frank is trying to protect her from her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't seem to be helping, actually. Like, she's still being exposed to, you know, these brood children coming and killing people around her all the time.
Yep.
Like, I think the only murder she's not present at is the grandfather's.
Yeah.
But she sees her grandmother get murdered. She sees her teacher get murdered. And then she sees Dr. Raglan get murdered.
Mm-hmm.
She probably goes downstairs. I don't remember. Does she go downstairs and see her mother strangled to death?
I don't think she sees that. I mean, maybe she does. I don't know.
But this little girl ends up seeing a lot of murder.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But we never see her being like childlike, really.
Right. Yeah. She seems very removed from that.
Yeah. She's never like playing with other kids. She's never like, Daddy, can we get ice cream?
Right.
She's very solitary and very quiet.
Yeah.
Just like not most kids.
Yeah, and I think it's another thing where it feels enough like a choice that you can really kind of extrapolate what that means.
Yeah. No, I think we don't see Candy interact with her mother.
No, we don't. Yeah.
And so one of the things that fascinates me about this movie is the people we do not see together.
Yes.
Who have these very, very close relationships, family relationships or what have you, but we never see them interact with one another, or we see their interaction in a very limited way.
Right, right.
And I think that is very much on purpose.
Yeah.
I think that is to illustrate the distance that has developed between the people in this family.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading one bit, a sort of a retrospective review of this movie that mentioned that the one sort of one of the things about the ending that doesn't track is that if Raglan really wanted to achieve getting Candy out of there and placating Nola, he should have sent Frank up to get her, get Candy, and Raglan should have talked to Nola. Yeah, because the whole movie, Raglan's the only person that can like rein her in. Yeah, and then he's like, "Why don't you do it, and I'll go get the child." You know, but of course, it's like movies; they have to have a scene. You know, it's
right. But you know what? On the flip side, I can counter argument that every time Raglan talks to her, she kills somebody.
That's true. That's a good point.
So maybe he was like, "Oh, I can't. Like, I can't. I realized the pattern finally, and that I'm the one."
Frank, I'm not a good doctor, Frank.
Yeah. I'm retiring.
I know
after
this. I know this now.
I think I'm going to be a Shakespearean actor instead.
Yes.
I liked the alternate titles for this movie we came up with on our chat. Do you remember?
Oh yeah,
I have them written down.
Oh please tell me. I forget what they were.
The only good fathers are murderers.
Yep.
The only good mothers are dead mothers.
Mm-hmm.
All women are disgusting monsters unless they're teachers. And my personal favorite, which is one you came up with. Alternate title, This Is All Your Mother's Fault.
Yes. Yeah. The teacher thing's interesting because the teacher thing possession was flashing so bright in my head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's such an it's the exact same character but from a completely different angle.
Yes.
Because in this movie, the teacher is smart enough to go like, "Listen, buddy, this is pretty fucking weird. I'm out of here."
This whole movie is also kind of like a bizarro version of Possession.
Yeah, it is.
Or Possession is a bizarro version of this movie.
Yes, this came out first.
Yes, where in this movie the husband is done. He's done. He wants out. He wants this marriage over. He wants to take his child and move on with his life. That's what he wants. In Possession, it is the husband who wants her to stay.
Yes.
He wants to keep the child. He wants to keep his wife. He wants his life to stay the way it was. Mm-hmm. And the wife is the one who's like, I got to get out of here.
Yep.
Can't do this anymore. But in both, it is initiated by the wife having some sort of mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. Some sort of breakdown, some sort of psychotic break with reality.
You could, in this movie, you could cut in the subway scene from Possession.
Yes.
And if Nola was like, this one time it got really weird, and then you cut in that scene and go, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, the first time it happened, I didn't know what was going on, and I was in the subway station.
Because that's basically
Yeah.
She's psychoplasmicing some sort of doppelganger creature in that movie.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, and then there is the weird in Possession, I think it's on purpose. I know it's on purpose. It's obviously on purpose that he falls for the doppelganger who is the teacher, who is the sort of nurturing, non-threatening version of his wife. Mm-hmm. Whereas in The Brood, the teacher's very different than his wife, not just personality-wise, but physically. Yes. They look very different. They're not at all the same type of person.
Right.
And it seems like there's a moment where maybe he's interested and maybe she's interested, but it's not nearly as explicit.
No.
It's not like it could be entirely that she's like, I'm just trying to be a good teacher to this poor little girl who I think is deeply traumatized and might be getting abused. And her dad keeps not showing up to PTA meetings and parent-teacher conferences. And so maybe if I say yes to dinner at their house, I'll have an opportunity to talk to him about what the fuck is going on with this poor kid. And then he like runs out on her and she's like, well, I can't leave this little girl alone who doesn't have a mom functionally and like whose dad just ditched her. So I guess I'll hang out until he gets back.
I'm going to go read my Flat Earth book. Let me know what you think. No, and it's in both situations. He's the father character is clearly cueing in on this nurturer and caretaker to
somebody who will take care of my child.
Right, yeah. And in I think in Possession it's more of it's that plus him looking for a partner. And in this one I think it's more of I just need someone to take care of my kid.
Yes. Yeah. I stand by my Possession assertion that I think he also wanted a mommy.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
But in this one, I don't think he does. I don't think in The Brood he's looking for any sort of emotional connection. I think it's purely practical.
Yes.
It's like, you are a trustworthy adult who I can leave my child with.
Yeah.
Please watch my child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the little... Here we are at an hour and 15 or so minutes.
We're finally going to talk about The Brood.
Yeah. What do you think of the little goblin people?
I love them.
Yeah.
I think they're great.
They're pretty they're weird.
But that's why I love them.
Yeah.
Like, I love that they're these weird little mutants. I love that, like, I read a thing that was like, they're actually played by child gymnasts.
I saw that, yes.
I love that.
It's very
makes
funny.
me extremely happy that there is a troupe of child gymnasts who got to play these little goons and jump on adults and hit them with plastic hammers.
My favorite shot probably in the whole movie is when the two little goons are on either side of Candy holding her hand as they're walking down the highway.
Yes.
It's so silly.
It's so weird. It's the best.
And just the idea of you've got these little rage monsters.
Yeah.
And he's got them in little snowsuits.
Yeah. Puts them in bunk beds.
It's so strange.
Pajamas.
It's so
cold out, Clay.
No, I get it, but
you
like
can't send a 5-year-old out in a Vancouver winter without a snowsuit. What's wrong with you?
Listen, they're fine. They live in Vancouver, Toronto, or whatever.
Whatever. I just picked Vancouver. I don't know
because you have no respect for the people of Toronto.
I have no respect for Canada.
That's fair.
Yeah. Sorry.
We just lost our one listener in Canada.
No, I've told you about this. This is a total tangent. I've told you about the fact that I lied to Greg for years about hating Canada.
No.
Oh yeah, I had him convinced for like how long have we been together? How long have we been married? I had him convinced for probably a solid 7 years that I hated Canada.
What was the motivation to create this ruse?
It was like a very like silly low stakes way to watch him get worked up.
This wasn't like he really wanted to go to Canada and you didn't really feel like going to Canada, so you
I mean, kind of that's how it started.
Ended up in this lie you just couldn't work your way out of?
That's sort of how it started, but I think I jokingly said fuck Canada and he got like genuinely affronted, and then I was like, oh, this is fun.
Okay.
And then I just kept it going, and then when he proposed to me and I said yes, I said I have something I have to admit to you.
That's really funny. Because I was wondering how you got out of this.
Well, at first I had thought I was going to bring it to my deathbed. I planned on dying before him and telling him in my last breath that I didn't hate Canada this whole time. But
I think it would be funnier if you told it in his last breath.
Yeah.
by the way, on your way out.
Yeah, just so you know, I never did hate Canada. Canada's fine.
Manitoba, fucking love it.
Just not Saskatchewan.
Bye, sweetie.
Anyway, Canada.
Yes.
Cold out.
Yes.
Those brood children are very, very young. They need snowsuits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it from like a modern version of this. Would these rage monsters would be like little creatures, like CGI creatures or something?
Yeah, they would be. I think they would be much more grotesque.
Yeah.
I think they would be much more violent. I think there would be like biting and tearing of flesh kind of things.
Do a lot of that.
They do, but they're
I was surprised at how I didn't remember them being so. The brutality is very effective because they're all of their kills except for the doctor who they kind of chew and tear at are blunt force trauma kills.
Yes, yeah, they're bludgeoners
And they're very
they're
effective.
persistent. Yeah. But they're not. I feel like a modern version now would have them have like rows of sharp teeth and claws, or they'd be like spitting acid or some shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You would definitely get the one shot where one of them turns around and it's like the mouth full of teeth from Fright Night.
And it like opens up its mouth wider and wider, and there's just more and more teeth. Which could be
And then
cool.
someone goes, "It's a metaphor."
For the way children will consume you if you let them. They're like cats. If you die when you're in the house and you're alone with them, they'll eat you.
Yeah. Honestly, speaking about that, the brood is not the cat eaters. Eaters who are cats.
Killer dwarves.
Yes. The Brood is one of those movies where I'm a little surprised no one's ever remade it because it's it's one of those ones that's just off the beaten path enough where they can take a flyer on it. Like when they remade, well, I know why they remade The Crazies, but like George Romero's The Crazies. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, it's not a zombie movie, but it's kind of like parallel to that track.
Yeah.
And it seems to have a cult following. Let's give it a shot.
It does feel like when like the Babadook and Hereditary were coming out, somebody could have taken a swipe at this one.
I'm thinking it would have happened even earlier. I'm talking
really?
right in the pocket of the remake.
Oh, like 2004
yeah,
or
like
something?
when they remade John Carpenter's The Fog and The Wicker Man, I feel like this is in that sort of Venn diagram.
Nick Cage as Frank.
Yes.
Too much personality instead of too little.
Yeah. Tom Welling from The Fog.
Nick Cage as Dr. Raglan.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. Like today, Nick Cage.
Yeah.
As Dr. Raglan.
That would probably be pretty good.
Yeah. Done by the Color Out of Space guy.
Yeah, well, not anymore. But,
well, yeah, fair.
Oliver Reed is just such a...
How do you replace him? Maybe that's the problem everybody kept
I'll tell you.
Up against.
David Cronenberg gets Oliver Reed in this movie to do all this heavy lifting. And in Scanners, he gets fucking Patrick McGowan from The Prisoner.
Yes.
And it's just like, you can't do better than that. If you need someone to talk, say some crazy shit and make it sound
convincing.
Give it gravitas. If you're not getting Alec Guinness to do it.
Yeah.
Those two guys,
that's
perfect.
That's all you have after Alec Guinness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally no other actors exist. Was there anything else you wanted to hit before we wrap it up?
I guess I kind of want to ask, do you think this movie is scary?
In parts, yes.
Yeah.
I don't find it scary as in like pop-up faces scary.
No, there aren't really any of those.
No. But I think it's like a lot of Cronenberg's movies, it just gets under your skin in a way that you might not be expecting.
Yeah.
And like when you get to the end, we didn't even really talk about the reveal of the egg sack thing, so I think it's a good excuse to talk about it.
Yeah. That
whole sequence, like when they do, this is such a weird setup with these little creatures.
So what are you? I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to ask. Mm-hmm. When you first watched this,
yep,
before she threw back her robes and exposed her external womb, what were you expecting to find out?
I don't even know, honestly. I'm not even sure.
Because I was expecting to find out that she had some sort of other children that she didn't tell him about, or that they were her siblings, or that they were science experiments. Like, I had like a bunch of different theories running around in my head about what the Brood kids were.
I honestly don't remember. If I had to guess, I mean, that line where Raglan says, no, they're all her children.
Yeah.
I think I kind of would probably be like, okay, this is going to be kind of weird.
Yeah.
I don't think I was expecting exactly that.
No, I don't think anybody could expect exactly that.
But it's so, I think that sequence is so great because Cronenberg's early movies are, how do I put this?
Fucking weird.
They're weird, but I also find them to be theatrically kind of flat, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So what I mean by that is I find the color palette he uses to be very drab.
Yes, there's a lot of brown and beige in this movie.
Right. And like there's a few scenes where I'm like, okay, is he doing this on purpose? Like, this is kind of a nice combination. It's a very weird drab combination of like a beige colored wall and some yellow chairs, but the yellow chairs match the yellow door. Is this on purpose, or is this, I don't know how much is set in art production design and how much is this production is being paid for by the Toronto government, and so we're using buildings we can get into.
Right. It's 1978, and this is just what office buildings look like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like in Scanners, I remember watching Scanners going like, what the fuck? Who? This movie looks like it was shot in an airport.
Yeah. A lot of his movies kind of have that vibe, though.
Yeah, I think
the lighting and all of that. Yeah.
I don't think he really starts to get theatrical with a capital T until like the Fly.
Yeah.
Because the Fly, then he's doing a big budget production.
Yeah.
He's working with great. I'm not saying that the cinematographer is bad or anything, but it's a step up.
Sure.
And I think in both this and Scanners, he really picks his places to go big and put the capital T on it.
Yes.
And so for this movie, which is for the most part just beige, and the color palette is beige and old snow.
Yes.
When you get to that reveal scene, the actual reveal is so theatrical.
Yeah.
Where she's got this weird cape thing.
Yeah.
That like splits in half like bat wings.
Yeah, it's like a robe that splits up to her sternum, and she's got kind of bright red hair, and she's very pale with big eyes, and the robe is very bright white.
Yeah.
And so when she throws it open and the cloth billows out and the way the light hits her, it is like a big moment. Yeah,
and I mean, like even the little creatures, their snowsuits are very plain. I mean, they look like the things from Among Us, but it's like they look like off the rack snowsuits.
Yeah, they look very familiar to anyone who grew up in the 70s, 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
They're just like a blue snowsuit.
Yeah, and so this final sequence is the first thing that really feels theatrical and like art designed and meant to have that sort of big dramatic feel to it.
Yeah.
And I really like the way that it plays out, because it is so, that really pushes you through the looking glass, so to speak, and then the weird shit just keeps happening and just building on top of it.
Yeah. I know. I agree. I love that scene overall, because she does that and then she gives birth to the creature and it's covered in blood. So it's the scene of very like reds, bright crimson reds and bright blinding whites.
Yeah.
And so it is very, very visually stunning in a movie where everything else feels very grounded in a kind of mundane, normal world. Yeah,
I know I've said this before, but one of my professors in college who kind of was a bit of a guide for me when it came to these movies told me that in every David Cronenberg movie, no matter how quote unquote normal, there's always one scene where you go, yeah, it's David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
And like this movie has the whole concept of this is very Cronenberg.
Yeah.
But that last sequence is like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, if that's the moment. Like,
Yeah.
even like...
It does feel a little bit like he was kind of making this whole movie to make this scene.
It's worth it.
Yeah, no, that's not. I realized even as I was saying it, I was like, this sounds like a criticism, but I don't actually mean it that way.
Right, yeah.
Like, it makes sense. Like, movies should drive towards their climax. Like, the climactic scene should be climactic. But it's interesting because I feel like it really stands out with him.
Yeah.
Because he makes these bigger stylistic choices in those moments than he does in the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I think there is kind of a little bit of an attitude or a vibe that he could really give a shit less what Frank is wearing.
Yeah. Great
You
hair,
know?
though. The guy's got amazing hair.
He does have great hair.
He's got, like...
But it's like, wear
Kurt
some,
Russell level hair.
wear some normal clothes.
Yep.
Look like a dad.
Wear something that looks like it was paid for by the people of Toronto.
Yeah, but I kind of, you get the sense that sort of stuff does not matter to him when it does not matter to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then when
Yes.
it matters to the story, it has to be very precise.
That's the thing with him that is so fascinating to me. And I think that's maybe where my brain is going when I think about the way that his movies look, is that it seems like he has a thing that he's interested in.
Yes.
And the other stuff is just sort of like, how do I get us to the thing I'm interested in?
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because I think that he and David Lynch are compared all the time. I'm sure we've compared them in the past. And I think they're kind of the opposite, where
Sure.
I think Lynch has so many more things he's interested in. Like, he doesn't hone in quite so hard on one thing or one theme.
Definitely.
He has so many, and so he just says, I'm going to make a thing and bring in all the stuff I'm interested in. Whereas Cronenberg kind of does the opposite, where he's like, no, there's just this one thing I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do whatever the fuck I got to do to get to that thing.
Yep.
And the rest of it's just in service of that thing.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the one of the things that can seem what's the word I'm looking for? Might make you undervalue this movie a little bit. Because I think you can look at Frank as the character who's like, no, Frank is just, I don't give a shit about him. He's just there to get us to the stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But I think that's doing a bit of a disservice to this movie to say that.
Yeah, no, I think it is, but at the same time, I think it's also a little true.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's not.
Yeah. I don't think it's I don't give a shit about Frank, but I do think it's more like the thing that is interesting about Frank is the decision he makes at the very end of the movie to kill Nola. I think that is what's interesting about Frank, is that the only way he can escape her is if she is dead.
Yeah. That's maybe that's the most
divorce
self-insertion
divorce related thing in the movie.
So about those reviews I was talking about, on Rotten Tomatoes, the consensus is The Brood is a grotesque, squirming, hilariously shrill exploration of the bizarre and deadly side of motherhood. Variety called it an extremely well-made, if essentially unpleasant, shocker. Leonard Maltin reviewed the film in 2 sentences. Egger eats her own afterbirth while midget clones beat grandparents and lovely young school teachers to death with mallets. It's a big, wide, wonderful world we live in, and rated it as an outright bomb. And Roger Ebert called it a bore and disgusting in ways that are not entertaining, as opposed, for example, to the great disgusting moments in Alien or Dawn of the Dead. And even went as far as asking, are there really people who want to see reprehensible trash like this?
Wow.
Of all the movies he's watched, this one is reprehensible trash. And this is 1960. He hasn't even seen Friday the 13th yet.
I guess he just didn't know the depths to which cinema would fall.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I find him very fascinating because sometimes I feel like he's right on the money. And other times I feel like he's just he's got like a pebble in his shoe or something. I don't know.
I just don't. I never followed his reviews enough to sort of recognize a pattern. It always just seemed a little scattershot to me whether he liked something or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just me.
I don't know if it was because he and Siskel became... You're aware of Siskel and Ebert, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I can't remember how old you are. I don't know if it's because he and Siskel became such high profile arbiters of quality.
Yeah.
But I feel like when they go in on a movie, they go in on it in ways that I just don't understand. Like we talked about it in Friday the 13th, where Siskel hated Friday the 13th so much and was so appalled that Betsy Palmer would do that movie that he published her home address and encouraged people to write her letters shaming her for it.
Yeah, he doxed her.
Yes. And like it's this kind of thing where it's like this movie, Ebert's going in on it as reprehensible trash. I don't know.
Yeah, say it's disgusting, say it's weird. Even say it's nonsensical if you really didn't think that there was anything to the storyline, or you think that it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of ways to describe it, but like I feel like even in 1979, there were movies out there much more deserving of the epithet reprehensible trash than this one.
Yeah, and even so, I don't know. I think it's just the idea that you would write a review of something that is vaguely or explicitly questioning like the morality of someone who would watch it, or so, like when you become a moral arbiter,
I get what you're saying.
That's when it starts to bother
Phrasing
me.
it as who would want to watch this reprehensible trash is sort of like,
honestly, I feel like if that's the review of your movie, that's a movie I want to watch. So
I was thinking the same thing. Like, it makes it sound interesting to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway, the only other thing to mention here is that this was Howard Shore's first movie score that he did.
Oh.
And Howard Shore, who would later on go on to do all the Lord of the Rings movies. And he also has done every one of Cronenberg's movies except for The Dead Zone.
Yeah.
So they clearly like working with each other. But
yeah.
This is number 174 on our list. How do you feel about the placement?
I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think I do too.
Yeah. This is one of the rare ones where I'm like, that feels right. I think it should be on the list. I think it's kind of iconic at this point, and it does some really interesting things. So I'm fine with it. At 174.
I would agree. I think that makes sense for this one. Do you like it? Would you recommend it?
I like it. This would be a recommend with caveats.
Yeah, I think you got to know your crowd for this one.
Yeah, because I could. There are a lot of people I know who would, even on the surface, you describe it to them and they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds interesting," and then they sit down to watch it and be like, "I hate this."
Even if someone saw, if they saw The Fly,
yeah,
and we're like, "Man, love that movie. Would love to watch some more David Cronenberg movies."
I would send them to this one.
Not the first one I would choose. I hopefully they would get there.
Right,
and
but
they
I
would
would
be
need,
happy when they got there.
Yeah, I would need a little more evidence that it was the Cronenberg of it all that they were interested in, and not the original The Fly,
right.
which is embedded in the DNA of even the Cronenberg adaptation.
Yeah, and I also think it's a little bit, it's just old enough stylistically that it might put people off.
Yeah.
I think I would go, if you're coming off The Fly, I would say, if you like The Fly, you need to watch The Dead Zone.
Yeah.
And then after The Dead Zone, if you like The Dead Zone, if you really want to get into it, see what this guy's about, you got to watch Videodrome.
That's what I was just thinking.
Which is weird, because Videodrome is like one of the weirdest movies ever made.
But I feel like if you've watched those first two Cronenberg movies, you need to see what the other end of the spectrum is.
Right.
And then if you're even into that, then you're gold. Just go wherever you want with Cronenberg after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I would go.
I agree with that ranking.
I have hit the randomizer button. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 beep, boop. And we have landed on number 27, which is Rosemary's Baby. So we got a heavy hitter coming next time.
Yes.
So until then, if you would like to help support the show, head over to patreon.com/thepenskyfile and subscribe to that. And you can follow Amanda and I as we take on the Video Nasties list.
Yes.
We've done, what is this? What month is this? This is May still, right?
Yeah.
So we've done 4. We have not yet done May. We've got The Living Dead and Manchester Morgue coming up this month. We've done Possession. We've done Tenebrae. We've done The Beyond.
Was Flesh for Frankenstein?
Flesh for Frankenstein.
Yes.
So we're getting gooey. It's getting fun.
Yeah.
So follow us over there. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Glenn.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.